All right, if you notice in those videos that a lot of the talk was about their student notebooks. And so part of what's going on is actually how do you take notes? How can you use notes? And I'm going to go over that a little bit today. Basically, when it comes to taking notes, it's very essential in the upper grades. It's essential for later studying, and it acts as like an external storage. You don't have to remember stuff because you can write stuff down. But just the act of writing stuff down kind of also makes it an internal storage. Because I know, like, if I write stuff, it also remembers. We also know that good note takers are better at reading comprehension. So is that a matter of, well, because they can understand more, they can write notes better, or because they can write notes better, or is it a mixture of both? That's also, you know, it's a correlation. That if I give you a measure of how well you take notes, and I give you a how well that you are good at reading comprehension, the two will correlate, high and high. So what do good note takers do? We know that they produce an effective set of external notes, and they connect to information they already have. Like, they just don't take notes. They might, in the margins, be like, oh, this is kind of like such and such. This reminds me of yada yada. They question the information with cues. When they don't know something, again, they might write in the margins. And that's why you saw with the Post-it notes in the video. The teacher's like, well, you know, take these. And they really, what did she have the student do in her Reader's Workshop conference was identify the main ideas. And good note takers can identify main ideas. What do we assume about notes? That students can find the main idea. They can't. That's your job as teachers through your mini lessons, through your reading conferences to really work on, okay? It's a critical goal is identifying main ideas, especially in informational texts. That students understand such words as justify, rank, academic, what are called academic tier 2 words. Words that you see, if you think about tier 1 being kind of like everyday words, tier 2 being academic words, justify, compare. Tier 3 are very specialized discipline words, like osmosis. Something you don't need in everyday life, but you need in a specific discipline. And that students can discern important details in oral lectures. It's really hard for you because I don't have any important details in my lectures, but in most normal situations, you have to actually listen to what I'm saying and find and write down the main idea. That's tough. Challenges of taking notes: simply requiring a notebook check in no way models, teaches, or requires students to use note-taking skills. True story, went to a research presentation on notebooks. It was this big conference called ARA. And they did a research project looking at how teachers graded science notebooks. Collected, you know, the rubrics, the notebooks, and everything. They collected like some 200 notebooks. Only 2 of them had any comments. Most of them just had a checklist. Did you have worksheet A, B, C? Did you test in order? Did you have notes from each day? Did you have chapter summaries? That's that's teaching organization. Important skill, but not teaching note-taking. A notebook test, a notebook check does not equal teaching students to write notes. Same thing with using a reader's notebook in Reader's Workshop. Just simply assigning a Reader's Workshop notebook doesn't mean they're doing it in journaling. Just because you have them free write doesn't mean they're actually doing something that's improving what they're doing. You have to have built-in assessments, and you have to assess their process. Just like we saw in the video. The teacher went through and said, oh, well, in each of these 3, you missed a setting. In this one, you missed a main idea. So let's set an action plan. You're gonna keep working on summary. You're going to include the setting, and you're going to include the important details. And taking a notes does not equal learning. Just because something writes it down does not mean it was learned. Sorry. Common note-taking methods, well, the good old copy and paste. This could be copying and pasting from exactly what I write on the board. Remember the first day of school, the first day of class, I just wrote notes and I threw up the word, goat, just to see if people were just blindly copying what I wrote down on the board. It happens. Copying from the board is no different than just hitting copy and paste from your keyboard. You have to interpret the notes. You should make them shorthand for you to understand. T-notes is another common way to take notes, especially with informational text. So if you're having your kids as part of Reader's Workshop or any workshop that work on informational text, T-notes are very common, where it's just simple, and then they put the concept over here. So say we're working on economy, they could put, supply on one side, and then the answer on the other, demand on the other. Just put it on the other side. And so you're just basically putting a T down the side. This is very helpful if, say, if you have students with an IEP plan, and you have to pre-teach vocabulary, or you can provide a scaffold. Some kids can just start with a blank notebook page. Other ones, you could give them the key concepts that they need to find. Not just vocabulary words, but they could be concepts, such as democracy. Now, something you can define in one word. But those are T-notes. Cornell system notes are also very similar. But instead what you have is a box at the bottom. And here they can either write a summary or a personal reflection, something. It's like they're concluding, point. And concept maps. Who can remind us what a concept map is?
Is that like when you draw the theme in the middle and then you draw lines?
Yeah, it's a spider web.
Spider web.
Exactly. It's, graphic organizer. So you could say if this was animals, then you could have birds, eagles, cardinals, falcons. All right, so, and then you could have, mammals over here, dolphins, bears. All right, so it's a concept map. And those are common note-taking strategies. Recommendation, for me, granted, you do, a lot of you, for those folks in 307, 308, I mean, you might do this concept map with pictures, but you're not going to do T-notes with your kids. But you can do something very similar with pictures. Classification is a very important oral language development skill. And what is this but nothing more than a classification system? So you can have a picture of the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Eagles. You have a picture of the Bears and the Dolphins. And they can put them, which ones are birds, or, it might be like bugs, something a little bit more simple. But you could do something with that with classifying. It could be by color. It could be by sound. So say you had a bunch of things that started with a B sound, and a bunch of things that started with a sound. They could classify in that way. And then take advantage of different technologies and provide explicit comprehension instruction. Those are kind of my recommendations. But if you want to move beyond notes in a journal, for your Writer's Workshop journals, okay, you have to have journals as part of your routine. Journaling extends content, because journaling basically provides a scaffold for the students. You, as a teacher, can use it for feedback during Reader's Workshop conferences. And journaling is adaptable to many different content areas, and it allows you to differentiate for each student. In the videos that we watched, that student was working on the S goal. Another student might be working on the C goal for connections, or the I goal for inferences, or the D goal for drawing conclusions. Whatever those routines. When we started talking about Reader's Workshop, we talked about identifying the skills you want to teach ahead of time. So, in language arts, how did I set up my Reader's Workshop journals? Oh, I'm missing a section up there, and I'll take again. A vocabulary section. Then I would have a plot diagram. Who can tell me what a plot diagram looks like? Yes, ma'am?
Is that like with the climax?
Yeah.
Stuff like that?
Yeah.
Oh, it was. It goes the
Yeah.
exposition up to
You're right. Keep going. Keep going.
with like the rising.
Like
Rising action
There we go.
to climax.
The falling action.
Falling action. Anybody know the fancy French word? Denouement. I think it's denouement. I could be wrong. But yeah, good job, ladies. And see, you can tell you're on the same team. So I put that, and I put that like right in the beginning of the journal when I'm working on narrative text. Okay, this is for narrative text, and they fill that out as I read along. Then, just like we saw in the videos, I like a couple of goals for Reader's Workshop for them to reflect on. Well, this is what I'm working on in my my skill that I'm working on is X. It's like a reflection part about how they're using whatever skill or strategy I'm teaching. Then I put in a section for just predictions about the book. This is what I think is going to happen. Here's why. I like adding in sections for character bios where they basically draw a little, almost like a Facebook page for the character, where they have to put in their interests, what they think is going to happen, and draw a picture of the character. Like a whole profile page for each character. So you have to kind of skip ahead and use tags. Then I like having a section of favorite quotes in the book, some quotes that spoke to them. Then in my Reader's Workshop books, I always have the kids have connections and reflections. Just general connecting or reflecting, having them reflect on a specific part. And then the last section, I always had just a free write section where you just, no rules, just kind of talk about the book. And that I am missing up there on the PowerPoint. I'm going to stop there. If you want to, I put the whole thing online, and it will be up there for you to look at if you so desire. All right, now I'm going to go over how we're actually going to hand this assignment in. So give me 1 second. Okay, in Vista, there's a link to the lesson plan template. And I explained that Reader's Workshop is really a routine. It's an instructional routine, not a lesson. But we're just going to use that template just to introduce it to you guys and get used to writing lesson plans here. So you can download that template from the okay, this is the lesson plan template. Now, the elements that I need in your Reader's Workshop instructional routine assignment. Okay, I will be looking for the following elements. A mini lesson. Okay, in that mini lesson, I want to see an explicit definition of the skill. Modeling, guided practice. Okay. On the template, it says materials. You can tell me what the materials are. Here in objectives, and this whole video will be online. In objectives, what will I be looking for? What reading skill will you be working on? All right, the initiation in this box. Put your mini lesson. In lesson development, this is where you're going to explain your Reader's Workshop routine. by routine. Everybody have that part? For the routine, I need to know the schedule. So if it's a 45-minute or if it's a 90-minute class, would it be 15 minutes mini lesson, 30 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of give me a breakdown of the daily schedule. Then I need to know what happens during independent reading. Okay. For independent reading. So, for example,
What's the word next to schedule?
this one up here.
No.
Breakdown.
Breakdown.
Oh, the schedule breakdown. Sorry. Independent reading. Like, what level? How's choice going to work? Are the students allowed to bring any book? Will it be the shared book? So, level of choice involved. How long? What will the kids do? Kids be doing? And then the last part I need in your routine is how you're setting up your journals or your reader's notebook. Actually, you know what? See this section called closure? Then you're going to tell me how you end the class, okay? What's your wrap up, your get back together time? Okay, in the closure, how do you wrap up Reader's Workshop each day? Is it just dismissal? Do you come back together to discuss? Is there a group discussion at the end? Everybody have this? In the assessment section, that's where you're going, because like I said, our lesson plan format doesn't really fit the assignment, but I just wanted to kind of introduce it to you. That's where you're going to talk about your journal, your Reader's Workshop journal. Because that's kind of how you're going to check in with students when you're not conversing with them.
So that's different than how are you setting up your Reader's Workshop?
Yeah, like you might say there's going to be 10 minutes of journaling time. Journaling just might be in there. Like every student will journal every day. That's just part of the routine. But the assessment is how are you going to measure if that skill you introduced at the beginning of in your mini lesson. How are you going to know if students actually met that skill? And you do that often through your Reader's Workshop journal. So you could give me, you could give me how you're setting up your journal. Or you can give me like example prompts. The point is, I need to know that there's a clear connection between the skill you taught in the mini lesson and the skill that you're assessing in your journal. Right? Your assessments should always be connected to your objectives and your learning activities. And in the modification, how do we modify and differentiate during Reader's Workshop? but not just reading level in the books, but how do we get to interact with students one-on-one? Conferencing. I want you to make up 3 students, okay? You're going to make up 3 fictitious students, and you're going to have a conference with them over on something. Okay, you're going to tell me what you're going to confer on, why you're doing it, what their instructional need is, okay? So, you know, it might be Billy is working on fluency. I'm going to do X. All right. 308 students. How are you folks going to approach this when you're not doing any reading time? Obviously, when we're in the instructional routine, the lesson development here, your reader's workshop, it's not going to be sit down for 20 minutes and read, okay? You might want to think about different kinds of, we talked a lot about the oral language development activities we do. I gave you some examples of activities you could do that worked on phonemic awareness. So you can come up with those routines, but it's got to be, you got to be something where gives you time as a teacher to work individually or in small groups, right? And in most early childhood classrooms, almost everyone, you're not the only person in there. So you can plan it that way so that there's another adult body in the room, right? And so you're saying, remember, you're not writing a one-day lesson plan. Your mini lesson is like a 20-minute segment for one day. But what I'm looking for is you to explain how you use this routine over time. Yes, ma'am?
So then for the actual like mini lessons, you want us to pick a specific book or?
Yeah, it could be a book. It could be, you don't necessarily have to have a book, but it's some kind of, a 10 to 20 minute lesson that explicitly defines a skill, models that skill, uses that skill with guided practice.
Okay.
It might involve a specific book, it might not.
Okay.
For 308, it may not at all, or it might, Other questions? All right, it's now 3. I'm going to stick around with 3:15. Let me just hit pause in this and then get this starting to upload for everybody.